Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. Wednesday, May 24th, here on the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Berganoni. I'm joined by Matthew Betz, Mike Wright, and guys, this music, it's like kicking off the summer for us dads.
Oh, I see. Yes, because the school year is about to come to an end. The temperatures are rising. The training camp starts soon.
I mean, as a dad, the three of us, Betz, I know, your girls are young, but it is a big deal.
Yep, they're young.
It's a big deal right now for us to say, okay, here's what's ahead of us. It's great in a lot of ways. You're going to get a lot of your kids in a lot of ways. But, I mean, it's the summer.
Some say too much.
Depends on the day. Depends on where they're at. But, yes, I mean, it's summer's here. We get to talk about a lot of stuff here on Dynasty Podcast. It's Summer of Best Ball on our DFS show. Our UDK is launching next week. So it is a busy time for us. And, yeah, I'm excited because Dynasty, I feel like the wave was the draft and after the rookies. But into the summer, you can start thinking about some real weird stuff when it comes to NFL rosters. So we're going to get real weird. There's an episode I was teasing Mike earlier, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Best. But we're going to have an episode called The Nasty Boys of the Summer, where we pick the nastiest of Dynasty players to talk about that no one else will. No one else will dare. And maybe even a year from now, they won't even be on NFL rosters. But
well, that's the definition of a nasty boy. You save the day for a week or two. It's Dynasty after the draft, after rookie drafts in this time period. It is the best because you see markets rise and crumble based off of just pure speculation on one tiny quote that was given. That is 75% taken completely out of context, and yet a player's value can seismically shift based on that one phrase of like, we're going to use this player this way, and all of a sudden it's just to the moon, and you go, and this player's their value's inflated. I will no longer even trade that player because now I'm fully bought in. Everybody else wants that player, and then a week later you get a correction of someone actually listened to the full conversation. That player's value crumbles, and you didn't trade at the right moment. It's a great time to be alive and to play fantasy. Dynasty.
It
fantasy
is.
Football.
It's also, boys, we're entering very quickly ahead of schedule season. All these boys coming off ACL tears. And also best shape of your life season. And it is right around the corner. It's coming up, and it should be a great summer.
The diet of a Dynasty manager is not meat and potatoes. It's puff pieces. It's just pure puff that you just got to roll with it.
Oh, yeah.
And
there's no nutritional value in these quotes that we are digesting.
It's fun to send it to people in your league because there's players that are just barely holding a roster spot for me. But if I get anything positive, they're going to be blasted out to the league because they matter to me. And I know there's going to be one thing about Terrace Marshall that my Twitter mentions are going to get blown up. And those are the kind of things that I look forward to.
I really like when Roto World's like the juggernaut of the news. As soon as Roto World publishes something,
Blurb Kings.
Yes, that's when really the majority of fantasy football people see it. If you live online and you're in the Twitterverse, you see things a lot sooner than that. But as soon as I like when a Roto World blurb goes out, I click in Sleeper, I put that person on the trade block, and so it sends it out to the rest of the league. Not so much that I want to trade that player. I mean, I'll listen, of course, but it's more so just like, you see that news on my player? Because good things are about to happen for me.
On today's show, we're going to talk about some Dynasty risers and fallers. These are players that we look at and we evaluate in May and say, hey, we think that you could get a little bit more. We think that things could, this trend could continue in the wrong direction. So the goal is to be ahead of the market, and that's what Dynasty is. Every single league is its own ecosystem, its own market, and you have to play it a little differently. So we're going to talk about some of those players today. But I wanted to hit a quick question. Speaking of training camp, speaking of offseason, let's talk about one off-season camp battle that you are paying attention to for Dynasty. So a lot of times with backfields, we are just real speculative of who's the second string guy, who's the third, who's the fourth. And I think the three of us have all brought up backfields that we're not quite sure a year from now what they're going to look like, much less this fall. So that's where you can find some value, maybe get players on the cheap, and maybe even trade to a manager that's kind of worried. So, Betz, I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, the backfield that I put down here is the Chicago Bears, which I feel like any dynasty manager holding Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman, or Roschon Johnson feels like they've got a lottery ticket that is going to pay off big time. You know, Khalil Herbert, 25 years old, former 6th-round pick. Donta Foreman signed to a 1-year deal in free agency. He's 27. And then Roschon Johnson, of course, drafted this year in the 4th round. He was playing at Texas behind Bijan Robinson, but a lot of people like the film on him. You go to the landing spot and you say, okay, there's opportunity here. No, David Montgomery is out. 36% of the carries are gone. But Justin Fields, fellas, is the running back one. 160 rush attempts last year for Fields, was second in the NFL behind only Jalen Hurts. And remember, he missed a few games down the stretch, did Justin Fields. So it really feels like a situation where one of these guys could emerge as the lead back, but I'm not sure it's going to really make a huge difference the way fantasy people want it to, meaning we know these mobile quarterbacks, these rushing quarterbacks tend to take away not only a lot of volume from running during in plays, but also target share to the running back position. This team added DJ Moore, so it's very hard to see a path where one of these guys just gets the job and is just a surefire, top 15 play every week. I just don't see it happening with the guys they have there. So my take on the situation is I think Khalil Herbert will get the first shot if he doesn't do well. Would not be shocked to see Roschon Johnson come in, but you could see a true committee here where just no one wins out and you're just stuck holding the bag. So I'm approaching this backfield right now in Dynasty that if there's anyone, aside from Roschon Johnson, like if you got him in the 3rd round of your rookie draft, like I'm fine to hold him. But if someone wants to come get Khalil Herbert or Donta Foreman, off my roster, if in the hopes that they're getting the guy in Chicago, I'm happy to trade that player away.
Yeah, the Chicago backfield, very tough, even in the Fantasy Footballers HQ. Like, I'm on the Khalil Herbert side. You have Jason is on the Donta Foreman side, and I can't recall where Andy is right now.
Andy's just kind of have them both ranked in a spot where it really doesn't matter that much. So it's like, yeah, you could go so many different directions.
Now, having said that, this in fantasy, this is where you can extract big winners. Sure, look at the situation and have a clear head of knowing there probably won't be. But if but the fact that there may not be one, that means that no one knows who it is. And that means that you can try and extract some value because someone could rise to the top. My bet is on Khalil Herbert because it's betting on who I think is the most talented running back, where Jason sees Donta Foreman and everything that he did in his bounce back year for the Panthers of, well, it looks like he could be the guy. And so it's a very, very difficult situation to evaluate. I think that Betz is right that even if someone wins, quote unquote wins for fantasy football, they're still a running back too at best because Justin Fields will take so much. But it's not a situation that I'm avoiding. I'll put it that way. I'm making my call, and my call is Khalil Herbert, and I'm going to go with my chips in on him. But you have to be open to other ideas, like maybe Roschon Johnson he is that good that he can take over for these guys because there's really little investment on any of these 3 players. Where Khalil Herbert likely gone very, very soon. Not a big contract. The Foreman contract that they brought him in on, very little money for him to be the guy. So it's so wild. But again, this is where you're making your call of your evaluation of the talent, and you might come out with just a sneaky running back too.
Yeah, the goal is to take a shot. Just
right.
You're shooting for it. Last year, Khalil Herbert was in our Dynasty trade targets. So I was thinking about like how we approached this backfield a year ago, knowing David Montgomery was going to be up for a free agent contract. It was, hey, take a shot on Khalil Herbert while he's a backup, and now you may have an opportunity where he is a starter, and I think you can get RB2 value, like that's where he is, but who knows. But Mike, give me another backfield that you think still trying to figure it out.
Sure. It's the Dallas Cowboys backfield, and this thing is nuclear and dangerous is the way that I'm really looking at it. Tony Pollard, look, all in. I'm excited for what we can see from Tony Pollard being the running back one. But, there's a lot to unpack here. So I'll start with the backups, right? We don't know who the true backup is going to be. They brought Ronald Jones in. Ronald Jones has just been aimlessly floating around the NFL.
Two-time Super Bowl champion.
Two-time Super Bowl champion. Ronald Jones. He is the second, so he has two Super Bowl champs. But he's just been floating around, can't get on the field, right? Even with how bad it seems like the Chiefs were down on Edwards-Helaire, they turned to a 7th-round rookie pick over Ronald Jones. That's what the Chiefs told us with their actions. Maybe he makes the team in Dallas, maybe he doesn't. And then you have Malik Davis, who saw a tiny bit of work this past year. And they drafted Deuce Vaughn, who's just an incredible player, but very, very undersized.
A baby.
Yeah, like you'll know when Deuce Vaughn's on the field because you'll go, wait, where's the running back? Oh, there he is. But I'm saying you got to wrap all this conversation together because you have Zeke, who is gone, 44% of the carries. Like, that's an outrageous number.
Right.
And with Tony Pollard, the Tony Pollard truthers out there, sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for because you should talk to the Lamar Miller people, right? Where Lamar Miller just for years and years on Miami, like, I can see it. He's so efficient. He's such an incredible running back. Give him all the work. And he goes to Houston with the contract, gets all the work, and is worse. Like, in Miami, he had 2 years, the running back 9 and running back 5. He goes into full-time work and never finishes inside the top 15 at the running back position. So can Tony Pollard actually be that guy? That's still a question that we do not have the answer for. I'm going to bet that he can, but my point is that if he can't be that guy, there will be value in whoever the backup running back is, and I think it's Malik Davis at this point. That's why he was, if you follow the fantasy footballers, I was hitting the drum at the end of the season because like these are guys that you got to pick up right now because their value is going to change drastically over the offseason. But we don't know who it is. We don't know if Tony Pollard can hold up. So there's so many questions around here, and yet so many questions and so many fantasy points to be had. There was already a ton of fantasy points for that position last year and for multiple years. That's just the identity of the Dallas Cowboys. You have Mike McCarthy going galaxy brain of, I got to rest my defense, so that means I need to run the ball more and not score points. It's a very strange way to look at a competition, is I need to score fewer points. But we know that the running backs are going to get a bunch of touches. They're going to score a lot of points. And it's try to figure out right now who that backup is, because once it's clear, like in training camp, they're like, it's locked in, it's Malik Davis, it's too late. You will not be trading a fair market value for Malik Davis at that point. So just saying, like, look at that opportunity right now, see if there's any way you can get call your shot and get these players on your team.
Would you rather have Malik Davis or a 3rd-round pick?
Oh, Malik Davis, easily.
I think that.
Go ahead, Betz.
I was just gonna say along the same lines, like, you don't even know what that 3rd-round pick could be. At least you know the situation for Malik Davis. And I'm not sure he's that talented, but the offense might be good enough that it might not matter. And the other thing too with this, just real quick on like the Mike McCarthy stuff, this depth chart doesn't match what we've heard all season. Like, all we've heard is they're going to run the ball, they're going to establish it. Like, with this backfield, are you actually going to do that, or are you just lying to us? Because this backfield doesn't say they're going to. So this feels like a spot that Zeke probably maybe ends up back on the roster, and then it makes a lot more sense. But I agree with you, though. Like, right now, I feel like you got to take a shot on one of these guys in the event that Tony Pollard injures himself again or just doesn't get as much work as we're projecting. So it is a situation that we got to monitor certainly all offseason.
I'll throw out Cincinnati backfield. I mentioned Joe Mixon a couple episodes ago. This year he carries the 5th biggest RB cap hit, and it's probably going to be his final one. They can save $10 million next year. So you're asking yourself a question of this year and beyond, and that's even bigger. So Chase Brown's the name that a lot of people are going for. I think Travion Williams is the one that Zach Taylor has talked about. But yes, I mean, Samaje Perine vacates 24% of the carries, 9% of the targets. Samaje Perine was a big deal to this team. He outsnapped Mixon in the playoffs. So I'm saying that Travion's the cheapest. He's going the furthest in best ball. And I'm kind of out on Chris Evans. The way that they've talked about him the last year or so has been they don't trust him. And I pay attention to those things in the pressers. So Chase Brown, Travion Williams, you're just trying to get cheaper stuff. And then Joe Mixon, I'm totally fine if you want to trade an early second-round pick or a late first for Joe Mixon. If you need 1 year to compete and you want to do it, I'm fine with that. I think,
man, that's dicey right now.
Those are the kind of decisions, though. If I'm there, I think I can compete. And I was like, I need another running back piece. I mean, best case scenario, you're getting a late first-round pick and saying this player is maybe, I mean, think about this past year, how the bottom dropped out at the end of the first round. I would rather have somebody that could be a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 for this year and get me over the top. So it's a backfield that we love the offense. We think they're going to be good, and Perine's gone.
But I'm saying that the fact that there's still an opportunity that Joe Mixon's not on the team.
For sure.
Come the week one. And if that is the case, Joe Mixon's not going somewhere and getting like a ton of work.
Yeah, I've just listened to Zach Taylor say like he is a starting running back, which coaches can lie. Don't get me wrong. Like Pete Carroll's the best at that kind of stuff. Like he can just straight up lie. But I'm willing, I think he's a player you'll know in just a couple of weeks. Like, okay, if he's their guy, I'm willing to trade for him for one more run.
Sure.
So you can get all of our rankings, all of our team opportunity reports in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. Betz, you and I have been blurbing nonstop. I just did the count. It's over 50,000 words. It's over 200-page book so far.
Let's say what's a normal novel? How many words are?
We could publish this right now, and I guess we are. That's what we're doing digitally.
I was going to say we are going to do that, Kyle.
I want you to take on Stephen King.
Okay.
Ooh, battle.
Just in word count.
Okay, don't get me wrong.
Not like a physical altercation where I want you to go fight Stephen King.
I think that I could take him, but maybe
at this point, Kyle, I would put my money on you. And I mean, it is Stephen King, so maybe there's some
scary.
Maybe there's some magic and like dirty tactics we don't know about.
That's going to be the next evolution of our podcast: is which older
fighting authors?
Yeah, which older celebrity authors can I beat up?
Is Grisham still around?
R.L. Stein, I could take him.
Oh, look, R.L. Stein, I got my money.
That's like my genre. Old horror.
I saw him. I saw his cameo in the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black.
And
you could take it.
Okay, that's all I need to know. But you get all that at ultimatedraftkit.com. Let's get into it.
If these trends continue, hey.
As Mike let us know, little shout out to The Simpsons there.
Yeah, Disco Stew, baby. Disco Stew doesn't advertise.
We're going to be talking about a couple players that we consider risers or fallers. You could do that by ADP, but ADP in Dynasty is a little wonky depending on which site, depending on when you're drafting, things change. So these are players that we look at our ranks in the Ultimate Draft Kit, our startup ranks, our rookie ranks, and we say, hey, I think things are trending in a direction where you could trade them away for a little bit more. You could, say this is a player I want to look at. But just a reminder that evaluating players in Dynasty is tricky. We mentioned that a couple episodes where we talked about rankings and how you form rankings. Every single league is league specific. Like, do you start 3 wide receivers, 2 flex? Is it super flex? Which we're doing a super flex ranking show next week on the Dynasty podcast for those people that say, hey, talk about it more. We will. But I feel like evaluating players in Dynasty is super emotional. Like maybe Dynasty is even more emotional than we realize when you look at the offseason and say, here's with this player, my expectation. And it's really easy to look at a player that disappointed you and to bury them. Like, I don't know. I might have a personal vendetta, Mike and I together, about DeAndre Swift. Maybe.
Yeah, just slightly. That man's dead to me.
Betz, you can have him with your Eagles, but he will never touch another roster for Mike and I.
Yeah, that's fine. And I don't know what to think about him, by the way, in Philly. I feel like, not that we're talking about him today, but it is kind of a little side conversation because if there's truthers out there and they are hyped about this Philly landing spot, which makes sense given the touchdown equity, but Jalen Hurts is the goal line back. So, so is it going to be there? I don't know.
You can have him.
You can look at any player, and over the course of 3 or 4 seasons, when you really get some NFL games under their belt, you can see how wild things can change based on the sentiment. So I looked at Tua, all right, in Superflex leagues just as a case study before we go into our players. And like when Tua was drafted, he was the QB2 behind Burrow, and then Herbert went after him. And in Superflex leagues, he was a top 20 pick. It made sense. Like, you're getting somebody who was drafted in the top 5 of the NFL draft. There's excitement based on what he did at Alabama. Do you remember Tua's rookie year? What was our sentiment after? Like, this guy might not be in the league.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
It was oh man, they drafted Tua and bypassed Justin Herbert, who just smashed all the records.
I mean, I remember those podcasts where we did the rookie review on Tua, and the sentiment around the 3 of y'all was like, oh my God, did they just royally screw this up? Because it's going to reset the franchise. And things have changed. The next year, he was the QB 16 in startups. The year after, he was holding value about QB 17. But after last year, Tua kind of got an uptick in value. And right now in our rankings, we have him as the QB 15 as a late 3rd round pick in Superflex because we see the upside. We look at the coaching staff. And I'm just using that to say that every single player, man, they can rise or fall based on a bit of news, but also just after a season, what is the sentiment? So
in the larger picture of Tua, like if the concussion concerns weren't there, Tua would be ranked even higher than 15. I think 15 is just you have to factor that in. When we saw what we saw publicly multiple times and all the games missed, you have to be factoring that in of like, if he gets another massive shot to the head, like,
yes.
is he done? And I mean, he talked about, right, that he considered leaving the game, which I don't blame him at all. Of like, I would have that evaluation too. Of is this really the best thing for me and my family to keep doing this? They decided that it was for this year, but that could change again.
Yeah, in our socials, we were putting out this question. I loved the responses because people were very hardline one way or the other. But Betz, would you rather have Tua or Deshaun Watson in a Superflex Dynasty League?
Oh. Well, the last time we saw Deshaun Watson play football, it was not great and quite terrible. In fact, worse than Jacoby Brissett. So I think I lean with Watson. And, for anyone out there that has any moral issues with that, I totally get it. But that contract says he's the starting quarterback whether he is terrible or not this year. And that is guaranteed beyond this year. As Mike just said, with the health concerns with Tua, that's not necessarily a guarantee that you have a starting quarterback in Superflex on your roster for 2024. So I think I lean with just the job security and hope for the best, honestly.
I think I agree with you. And I brought that up because my riser I want to mention first is Elijah Moore, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns.
What are you doing over here, Kyle?
Okay, here's what
are you doing?
I want to lay out a case.
I was
here.
shocked when I saw this, by the way. So I'm excited to hear what Kyle's angle is here.
Well, guys, here's kind of what's happened. I've never really been on the Elijah Moore train, and no one else is on it right now. So I figured.
So yes, I see. Kyle sees an empty bandwagon, and he's like, I got to jump on this.
It might be going off a cliff.
Yeah, it might be.
But I will say this, in terms of buying opportunities and trading for opportunities, it's rare to find a wide receiver with his draft capital, with 2 more years left on his rookie deal, at the age of 23, that you could say, this is a brand new start. And or
you could say he's already had to be on his second team, and his rookie contract's not even done.
That is not how I am looking at it. But, so, I went back, just, for fun or pain or whatever it is, and I watched all of Elijah Moore's targets from this past year, 66 of them from the likes of Joe Flacco, and Zach Wilson and Mike White and Chris Streveler, and like it was bad, okay? Bad in the sense of continuity, bad in the sense of just things weren't great. He was creating separation. I will say that he's always been a player that we could say, hey, he has the skills to get open, the speed, and he plays kind of like Emmanuel Sanders did. Like, he's smaller, You'd think he'd be a slot-only guy, but he can also play outside. But, man, that team, beginning of the year, it was rough. Like, Flacco had those monster games with tons of pass attempts, but so many targets Elijah Moore's way and really the rest of the team's way were not catchable. Less than, I got to get this right. Oh, Mike, I'm going to really screw this up. Less than of his targets were even catchable. Less than 55. It's really, really, really bad. But when you look at the ones that were catchable, he had the 5th highest catch rate in the league. So he has hands. We've always liked the talent.
Yes.
But it seems like the Jets didn't like him that much. In 15 games with Zach Wilson, he's averaged 2 catches a game. It was just not good. So I'm not going to say that paint a rosy picture about the Jets. I will say that I think Cleveland will not be able to be as run heavy as they have been in the past. And when you look at when the offense was humming last year, it wasn't Watson. It was how they schemed things with Jacoby Brissett. It was just better. So I think that Moore has a different skill set than what they've had on their team. Their best slot receiver last year was Amari Cooper, who barely played in the slot. They've needed that for a while. I think DPJ has been an outside guy. He's in a contract year. I think that's what Cedric Tillman is just an ex-receiver. So I think that they finally get a receiver that they can use in 3 wide receiver sets that can make a difference. And I find that where he's being valued, I think he could be worth more. I'm not saying he's going to break out and be incredible, but would you rather have Elijah Moore or a late 2nd round pick right now?
I'll take the 2nd.
Betz?
That's tough. I mean, we've talked a lot about some of the concerns with the depth of this class not being great, and specifically in 1 QB leagues, when you get to the back of the 2nd, it gets real ugly real fast. So I might just take a shot on a guy that gets a fresh start and hope for the best. I mean, you talked about it. Like, the draft capital is there. He's young. We certainly like the talent coming out. Earned 19% target share as a rookie. That's pretty solid. You're making a bet, and it's a pretty big parlay to hit that.
Yes.
Not only does Elijah Moore not bad at football, he's still good, and Deshaun Watson can return to form, and they throw more than what we've historically seen in Cleveland, which I do think they will. But the opportunity cost is so low that I think you can take your shot here if you need a wide receiver. Yeah,
and the one that I was given, I was thinking back to our conversation earlier about veteran or the running backs and the rooms we don't know. I bet that you could entice the Elijah Moore manager and give them one of those running back pairs and say, hey, you have, let's say they have Khalil Herbert, like, hey, I'll give you Donta Foreman for 1 year. He has his 1 year contract for Elijah Moore. Like, you're kind of saying there's a backfield bet, there's a wide receiver bet. That can work depending on team construction and what you want. But I think it's possible that he ends up giving you flex value. I'm not betting on him being, a top 24 wide receiver, but I think there's more there, and we obviously liked the talent a couple years ago. So, Mike, why don't you hit us somebody that's rising somehow in your mind, which I did not think this would be there either.
Like the phoenix from the ashes of his Achilles injury. I want to talk about Cam Akers, who is about to turn 24, running back from the Los Angeles Rams. So 24. We're still good age-wise for Cam Akers. It has been like an unbelievable Hollywood story here for Cam Akers of, a 2nd-round draft pick, has the size, has the athleticism, goes to a very good location, doesn't really have a fantastic rookie year. But then heading into the next year, this is Cam Akers' backfield. He's going to be the guy. Let's go. Game 1 immediately. Achilles injury. It's done. He's toast. And an Achilles injury has been a death blow, truly a death blow to running backs and their ability to come back. You have this off season where we're getting nonstop puff pieces from the Rams of, don't worry, Cam Akers is going to be here at the beginning of the year. You're like, that is, sir, that is a lie. That is impossible. I don't know how do you think that Cam Akers is going to be there for week 1? Lo and behold, he was there. He didn't do anything. Granted, he had 3 carries for, let me check the notes here, for 0 yards. So a combined 0 yards on 3 carries is really, really bad, right? Things are going along at the beginning of that season. It's not looking great. He looks like a player who is returning from an Achilles injury. Then this I don't know what happened, but everything blew up for the Los Angeles Rams, and Akers was made inactive. You had the head coach, Sean McVay, come out and say Cam Akers is not going to be on this team. We are going to trade him. Shocking stuff, guys. No one wanted to trade for a running back who was coming off an Achilles injury and was out on the field giving garbage production. No one wanted him. The Rams reluctantly brought him back. They start giving him a little bit more work, and then boom, the final 4 weeks of the season, Cam Akers just erupts for big-time NFL production, big-time fantasy football production. In the last 4 weeks of the season, my dude Cam Akers was averaging 5.5 yards per carry, was on pace for over 1,700 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Now, that's a ridiculous extrapolation of 4 games, but the point is he was playing out of his mind. 3 straight games of over 100 rushing yards on a team that sucked. The Rams at this point, were we at the Baker Mayfield experiment at this point? I don't recall, but
yes.
things were really, really, really bad.
He single-handedly KO'd me in a league. Cam Akers did in week 16, where I was playing somebody I was ahead, and then he had his 3-touchdown game. I was so mad at Cam Akers that week.
When he was the running back 1 against the Denver Broncos, who I guess they had kind of given up, but their defense was still solid throughout the season. And then you head into you're like, wow, that's such a nice story here for Cam Akers. Recovered some of that value, the bounce back. Can't wait to see what the Rams actually do at the running back position. And they said, we're not really going to do anything. It's just Cam Akers at the top. You still have Kyron Williams, who was who plummeted in value over draft season. They did take Zach Evans. Do you recall what round that was?
7th.
Was it the 7th?
Yep.
Oh,
I thought it was 6th.
I thought it was better than
I'll look
that.
it up real quick.
Yeah, go ahead and vet that. But the point is, it was a day 3 pick. This was not an investment. And Cam Akers looks like he's going to be the starting running back yet again. Matthew Stafford is going to play. He's not retiring. He's going to be healthy. Cooper Kupp will be back. It's insane. We were talking about the Rams in the office yesterday. What are the range of outcomes for the Los Angeles Rams? They could be the worst team in football, or they like with Sean McVay and the pieces that they have, they could somehow get it together and be a playoff team. Okay, so we got Evans drafted in the 6th round. Cam Akers is the guy, and we're now multiple years removed from the Achilles injury. Betz, I'll let you talk to that because that's more your department. But to me, it's like Cam Akers. I can't imagine that the dynasty market is very hot at all for Cam Akers. And he looks like he's in line for a ton of work on an offense that could be higher powered than people are projecting right now.
Yeah, their range of outcomes is insane, like you said.
Yes.
If Stafford stays healthy, if Kupp stays healthy, if Cam Akers is good, the offensive line had major issues last year with injury. If that all goes right, you could see this offense returning, maybe not to what it was 2 years ago, but better than league average, which certainly was not the case last year. And just to speak to the Achilles thing, every year it happens with this sort of injury where people think, he's ready for week 1, he's back. But the issue with this one is that it's not just a 1-year injury. It's not even a year and a half. It's usually a 2-year type of injury before these guys are truly back to being 100%. And the issue with that is that a lot of NFL teams aren't willing to wait for you to be back to 100%. They either move on or they cut you or they bring in your replacement. And we're kind of seeing that with D'Onta Foreman getting his second life in the NFL years and years after his Achilles issue. So I do think the burst, the explosiveness is certainly going to remain for Cam Akers. I mean, he's still super young, which is a big predictor of success long-term with that injury. The issue is last year we had zero clue entering week 1 how the team felt about Cam Akers. And then I think it was Peter Schrager, the day of kickoff. Remember, he was I'm hearing they love Kyron Williams, just keep an eye out sort of thing. And then of course he has the high ankle sprain. He misses 2/3 of the season and we never saw him on the field. So it would not shock me if Cam Akers gets 250 carries this year. It would also not shock me if all of a sudden he's not even the starting running back in week 8. So I have no clue how to value Cam Akers. Very helpful advice for me on the show today.
So are you making a bet? So it's a contract year. He turns 24 in a month. That he's going to get a second contract. Maybe not with the Rams, but like, could he get, if it's a solid year, like a Miles Sanders-esque deal where it's like, 3-4 years? Is that what's in line? Because you're making a bet on a young player who we think is going to only hopefully get better if they use him more, and another team might say, hey, we remember why this guy was a second-round pick. I
mean, this year would have to go just fantastic for Akers to get that type of contract, but an Alexander Madison type of a contract where I think that's in the range of outcomes. And it's not just that. I mean, it's also this year. I mean, you're talking about a late first round for Joe Mixon, right? Who was actually quite terrible last year on football field. Yeah, he puts up fantasy points because he's in the right position that can give you a ceiling game like the 4 or 5 touchdown game. But Cam Akers has a huge opportunity. Won't cost what Joe Mixon would cost in terms of if you're just sending over draft picks or players. And there is a crazy, bizarre world where Cam Akers outscores Joe Mixon this year with him on the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, crazy stuff like this happens all the time. And if Cam Akers returns to, let's say, 90% of what we all hoped he could be, that's an above average running back in the NFL. Cam Akers was a great prospect. And the fact that he had that 4-game run there at the end, and it's not just, ripping off a 50-yard, it's not like Travis Etienne numbers. I mean, that's where everything is one carry. He had those 3 straight games where he was averaging 20 carries a game, and he's a pass catcher. I mean, that was one of the bigger surprise after I got done with my Ultimate Draft Kit rankings. I'm like, oh man, Cam Akers is embarrassingly high, and like I don't know if I want to tell
Go ahead and
people.
Knock that down a little bit.
Yeah, like I don't know if I want to publicly tell people what I think about Cam Akers right now, but I do. I think that Cam Akers is going to be like sneaky good, and for dynasty purposes, as long as he has a solid year, he will get another starting opportunity.
And that's what you're doing in Dynasty. You're making a bet in a contract year that this player is going to be even more valuable during the season and potentially next year. Betz, I'll let you talk next about somebody who, honestly, surprised he's still in the league, honestly.
What's funny, Kyle, is I just realized if you turn and look over your right shoulder, and no one can see this, is that Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown behind you on the wall?
It is indeed.
I mean, there's a picture
this is perfect.
of Kenny G too, but whatever. Yeah, keep going. Yeah,
the real Kenny G, by the way. Not Kenny.
Because Kyle hates Amon-Ra, but it's so fantastic to see him just smiling right next to his picture. Great podcast information for everyone out there, audio only. But for Amon-Ra St. Brown, what I really want to just kind of touch on is sort of how last year, entering the year, the dynasty community was very split. It was like you either looked at the previous year and you said that production was so fluky because DeAndre Swift was out, TJ Hawkinson was out, they had no one to throw to, he ran insanely hot, and half the other people were saying, well, maybe he's just that good. And we kind of found out this past year, the dude is good at
he's
football,
that good.
especially earning targets. 28% target share, 2.40 yards per out run, tied Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs. That's the level of efficiency he was giving you. And then you look at what happened this past offseason, everyone was saying, well, he's good, but, they took Jameson Williams 12th overall. Like, he's going to be back. He's the dude. He gets slapped with a 6-game suspension. We think they might add some pass catchers in free agency. They don't really. Marv Jones, all due respect,
whoa. You can't talk up this player.
It's not necessarily at the peak of his career, I'll say.
Kyle
and they
is
took
melting.
a rookie tight end.
I'll let that slide.
Kyle's he can't even focus right now. And they took a rookie tight end, and we know historically they usually struggle to produce in year one. The offensive coordinator is back. Now the team is talking about, Jared Goff could get a contract extension. And I know Jared Goff has his flaws, but he has eyes for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he supported an elite wide receiver in Cooper Kupp for a couple of seasons. So it just feels like you couldn't have had a better run out in the last, year for Amon-Ra St. Brown. 23 years old. And I was actually very surprised to log into the UDK Plus in the Dynasty Pass to see Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown as our wide receiver 7, which made me so happy to see that, because I feel like he's a guy that you're like, yeah, you know, I'll take him at like the 1-2 turn in a startup, or, you know, in Superflex, maybe in the back of the second round sort of thing. Do you guys feel like he is locked in as a top 10 wide receiver for the next couple of years?
I'm so scared because I could easily give a negative case. Okay, let me just say this about Amon-Ra. Like I've said before on our podcast, Betz of DFS betting, he is Keenan Allen. You're going to get a crazy high floor. The touchdowns, I think he ran super hot as a rookie. That's the only thing that I think I would worry about compared to some of these other players that are in the same realm, like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. I think they're project more as like an alpha outside wide receiver. So I would take those players ahead of him, but I think he's top 10 in startups. So I'm probably just a tad lower, but I totally get it.
Yeah, I would. He's a top 10 guy. I mean, his like that big slot role is when teams find the right player and they use them the right way, like Cooper Kupp. I mean, that's what it is. Amon-Ra is used very similarly to Cooper Kupp, and like we don't have doubts on Cooper Kupp's production, right? Like NFL changes, and they've got these guys running hot now in the slot.
All right, Betz, I'll put it to the test. Would you have Amon-Ra or a top 3 pick in a Superflex league next year?
Ooh, what's interesting is I just traded away. I'm currently still in a rookie draft right now. This is for 2023. The pick ended up being Bryce Young. Just flipped that for Amon-Ra. Didn't necessarily need that young quarterback. So that's tough because everyone loves Caleb Williams.
Yes.
And he could be very, very, very good.
And Marvin Harrison Jr. next year.
And Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like a dude. So, yeah, I think it's more of a team-dependent situation, which I hate the cop-out answer, but truly it is. If you're contending, keep your pick, or keep your pick and keep Amon-Ra. But if you're rebuilding, I don't hate that idea, especially in Superflex.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in that 3 to 5 range, 103, 104, 105, that I think that's probably the fair valuation. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get to some fallers.
Hey, Foot Clan, I want to take a quick break from the Dynasty Pod to remind you that the Ultimate Draft Kit for 2023 is coming out on June 1st, which means you have just a few more days to grab it at the lowest possible price. This is where you're going to find all of our rankings, our player projections, upside, risk ratings, and a whole lot more. We've got consistency charts. We've got tons of upgrades for the upcoming year, and this is the time to get it. You can get it at a discount before June 1st. Get the UDK Plus for all the Dynasty access. It's going to be an incredible year of fantasy football, and you want to knock it out of the park at your draft. Head to ultimatedraftkit.com.
We're back, and I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I'm going to bring up a player that is, in my mind, and the way that I'm looking at rankings, the way they're looking at our stuff in the Ultimate Draft Kit, falling a bit in Dynasty values, George Kittle, which is crazy because I feel like I've been the George Kittle guy for a while. And I've lost a lot of money, Betz knows, on George Kittle in best ball. Last year he was pretty good at the end of the year. But George Kittle, 29.5. He has 3 more years under contract. Potentially, the team could get out in 2. The touchdowns were super hot with Brock Purdy last year. He had 7 touchdowns over the final month compared to averaging 4 per season in his career. So I think we would all say that's probably going to go down from him getting a career high in the double digits.
What if that's just who Brock Purdy is?
How dare you not speak of Trey Lance being the guy that supplies the touchdowns?
Look, we're not talking about future Vikings starting quarterback. We're talking about the 49ers starting quarterback.
I just want to say this about Kittle. In my mind, I think he's been grouped always. It's Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle. It's like the big 3 for the last, 3 or 4 years. But in Dynasty, it's a different conversation. In our rankings, we have George Kittle as the tight end 6 in startups, behind Dallas Goedert, behind TJ Hawkinson, Kelsey, Pitts, Andrews. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. I think there's an argument after this year that you could see players like Pat Freiermuth or some of the other young guard be able to jump and be right there with Kittle, where I thought he was in a tier alone. And he is getting this point, tight ends age pretty well compared to other positions, right? You can get solid production. We're seeing it from Kelsey, but the biggest decline is when you go from age 30 to 31 and 32. And so there is a point with George Kittle where there's a window where I think you could still sell him for good value based on what he did last year, which was a crazy touchdown season, they did a 5th-year option to Brandon Ayuk. They extended Debo. It's hard. I think the touchdowns are going to be hard on that team and how they get divvied out. I think you're going to have a season where it's going to be, a CMC or it's a Debo season. So for me, I'm finding that it's a window where Kittle is still good, but he's so volatile that I'm not considering him an untouchable tight end, that I'm willing to trade him for a late first-round pick in Superflex leagues.
What?
In a Superflex league.
What?
I feel fine about that. Betz?
So let's put names to that, right? Because this year's class in
next
Superflex.
year's class.
Oh, you're going 24.
Oh, okay, Kyle.
I
was going to say for this year's class, you're looking at guys like, who falls there? Like Dalton Kincaid, Quentin Johnston sometimes falls there, Zay Flowers. Like you would have those guys above Kittle.
No, thank you.
In Dynasty.
I think that I'm fine with that. I've traded in a league where I got Treylon Burks instead of George Kittle. And that was a bet on me saying a second-year player kind of underperformed in people's eyes, but long-term I also had other I had Chig on that team, so come on, I have Chig and Burks, but it's one of those things where I'm
all in on the Titans offense. What could go wrong?
I'm all in on 2 players that I think I
good.
think they have good yards per out numbers. So I'm willing to be out on Kittle.
As you divvy up 2,000 passing yards, you look pretty good.
I'm willing to be out
Watching
on Kittle.
Kyle try to justify rostering the entire Titans passing offense right now.
You guys can laugh all you want. You know me, I'll be even more stubborn about this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
So
you gonna get Nasty Boy Cobb Phillips next?
No, I'm gonna get Racy.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Do you guys feel like Kittle is still seen as a top 5 dynasty tight end by most people?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't have him ranked there. So that's more of the conversation of I think he's still seen as that an elite tier, and he's slipping in my mind, so I'm willing to trade him.
Makes sense. Just to speak to it, I have in one of my leagues we had a change in our league size and we had a dispersal draft, whatever. I got George Kittle. I have Mark Andrews, but I took best player available. I have been trying like none other to get out from George Kittle. I don't know if it's just my league or what, but no one's giving me anything close to what I think is fair for him. So I don't know that you can get the same value, which is Kyle's point here, is that he's a faller in terms of dynasty value. So I'm just a little worried that he's one of those players that you might, of course, every league is different, but you might just have to ride it out and hope for the best.
All right, Mike, hit us with yours.
All right, I want to talk about backup running back for the Buffalo Bills. That's right. James Cook. Yeah, look, we're already dropping the hammer, calling him the backup. On paper, there's a lot of stuff that is there for James Cook. 2nd-round pick. That's incredible draft capital. Heading into year 2, Devin Singletary is gone. James Cook could be the main guy. However, there are some red flags that I can't get over. This offseason, I think, more than ever, this was the offseason pre-draft of the wait for a running back and wait for a potential elite fantasy running back, which it makes sense because we had 2 guys. You had Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane, who seemed like they were going to get really good draft capital, but they're light. They're under 200 pounds. And that kind of was the crux of all arguments for those players. Is they're really good. Yeah, but they're really small. They're really good. Yeah, but here's my argument against them. They're really small. That's what it was. Meanwhile, here's James Cook sitting here at sub 200, and people I didn't really hear a peep about it last year. I think me and Kyle talked about this of his 2nd-round draft pick was pretty surprising. So I think we didn't have a chance to really get into the argument of, well, James Cook is undersized. Well, here we are now, and I'm bringing it up. James Cook is undersized. And they immediately brought in Damian Harris. And it's always funny to me when these teams, they have a player who torches them. And they're like, we got to get that guy on our team. Because that is exactly what happened for Damian Harris, who just destroyed the Buffalo Bills while he was a Patriot multiple times. And they said, that's the hammer that we got to get in on this team. Because I mean, when's the last, I guess they tried it with Zach Moss, but it's like they haven't had a hammerback for quite some time. And for me personally, I'm out on the idea of the pass-catching running back for the Buffalo Bills. Like, the pass-catching of course, there will be some targets for the running back, but I don't think at this point, unless they get someone like Christian McCaffrey, we're not going to see an explosion of targets to the position. You're just going to see an average. And running quarterbacks, it takes away targets from the running back position in general. And what is James Cook? Like, what is he if he's not an elite target receiver? Because I don't think those numbers will happen. Is he going to be the goal line back? That would be super weird when you sign Damian Harris and you're like, we're going to give the sub 200-pound guy the goal line carries. I would give those to Damian Harris. And like, I think that there's a world where Damian Harris is just good. Like, I think that he is a very good running back. He wasn't. They didn't need to bring him back in New England, but Buffalo had a need, and they immediately addressed it with Damian Harris. And so here we are with a team that since 2018, Bills running backs have ranked 26th, 23rd, 30th, and 31st in fantasy points scored. And you're going to give the goal line to somebody else? Like, where is the value for James Cook? So I'm bailing out, man. I'm bailing out where I can because I think that there's still people who are going to believe. And so I'm out. Is Nyheim Hines still there?
Yes.
So it's like that guy, he might be a better pass catcher than James Cook. Like, there are I don't see the path for James Cook with the current roster construction that the Buffalo Bills have. And on top of all that, being smaller, like, I'm out. I'm OUT on James Cook.
This is one of the fallacies of draft capital where the Bills were picking into the second round is not that much difference than the top of the third. But in our minds, it's like a massive difference. Same thing with CEH. Like, it's a first-round pick, but, like, there's not a huge difference between where, it's just...
Where him and Jonathan Taylor went in the draft?
Yeah. So, I think you're right, Mike. Like, what is he, a between-the-20s running back that will get some, receiving work, but their running backs only saw 20% of the targets last year. It's just really hard. It's a bet on efficiency. It's a bet on him getting some outlier touchdowns when they have two goal line backs, Damian Harris and Josh Allen. So I'm with you. If people want to view him as like a low-end RB2 or something, then he seems like somebody you can trade away. I'll give you some names. You boys can say, would you rather have James Cook or Isaiah Pacheco in Dynasty?
The old draft capital versus production.
Oh, my goodness.
I think I'd take Pacheco.
Yeah.
But both these guys are like a 1 year and we'll see what happens sort of thing. So just give me who projects better for this year, and that's Pacheco.
That's exactly my thoughts.
James Cook or Alvin Kamara?
Ooh.
With suspension or without?
He's going to be let's say 6 games.
I'm going Kamara.
Yeah, I think I do too. But man, the drop off in his production's been efficiency has been scary.
I'll give you more running back. Would you rather have Rashad White or James Cook?
Oh, Rashad White.
Okay.
Yeah, that sucks because that you could have made that decision easily with your draft. Like James Cook was picked before him. Not that I'm in love with Rashad White. He was incredibly inefficient where James Cook actually ripped off some big runs. But I'll take the volume over what I project for James Cook.
That's what's so funny is you're looking at completely different team situations. The Bucs are going to be trash this year. You look at Rashad White, who had 50 receptions last year. It's like if they were flipped, you'd be like, "Oh, Rashad White's gonna kill." But Buffalo is kind of the alluring thing, and Mike brought up that stat. Like for fantasy purpose, their running backs have actually just been way down there because Josh Allen takes so much goal line work. Betz, why don't you list a player that has always been in Mike's heart, and recently he's expelled him from his heart?
Well, I didn't expel him from my heart. I traded him, and when Kyle, when you were like, we're emotionally tied to these players, this is immediately who I thought of because I drafted him. I had him for 7 years or something like that, and I traded him, and I felt super duper sad when I traded him.
for listeners, we're talking about Mike Evans.
Yes. No, I was setting you up.
Just curious. I liked it, Mike. What did you get in return for Mike Evans?
I got.
Do you remember?
I got a Rashad Bateman who was just freshly placed on IR and a first-round pick.
Okay. So you traded him last year.
Yes, and that first-round pick turned into Zay Flowers. So I traded Evans for Flowers and Bateman. I mean, all the Ravens.
That's the goal.
Lamar for MVP. Here we go, Mike.
Like, Kyle loves all that yardage from the Tennessee Titans passing game. I'm soaking up all the Baltimore passing yardage.
I like the Yak
team.
boys. These are Yak boys, man. Burks and Chig.
I think getting out from Mike Evans last year was one of the most savvy moves you could have made in Dynasty because the writing's on the wall, boys. It does not look good. Mike Evans, insane. When you look at his career game logs, like you literally can just close your eyes and project 1,200 yards and like 10 touchdowns, and there's a good chance you're pretty accurate most seasons. He's just been insane. But he turns 30 in August, right before the season starts. He's not under contract for next year. And when you look back at the season last year, unless you had him in the fantasy championships, which very unlikely that was the case because he was so bad all year, it was really tough to see how good he was, right? Because 207 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 17 last year, almost 44 points. 18% of his yards on the entire season came in that week, and he scored 6 touchdowns, aka 50% of his touchdowns came in that week. So it was not a good year when you look at the Bucs
but that game
general,
was a good time.
But
Betz.
that game was sick. That game was awesome. And the writing's on the wall that this team is looking towards the future. Clearly, they didn't sign Baker Mayfield to any money. Kyle Trask, they have no commitment to financially. So they're going to be getting a rookie quarterback next year, turning the roster over, or a free agent, but turning the roster over. The offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, is gone. Tom Brady, of course, is gone. And in those 2 seasons with Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich, number one in pass attempts per game were the Bucs. So you could see the volume coming down. And Baker Mayfield, boys, last year, objectively, not good at the football game. That was happening on the field. Statistically, the worst in completion percentage over expected and EPA per play. So he was down in the Zach Wilson territory. So now you have just the concerns of what is the offense, how much volume, and how efficient can it be? So it just feels like Mike Williams, the value has just fallen out crazy. And looking at our Dynasty startup rankings, we have him 82nd overall, which just seems crazy for a player like Mike Evans, who's so talented.
Betz, I saw you the other day. You got in a Twitter fight over Baker Mayfield. Or at least people were angry that you said Baker Mayfield wasn't good.
Wait, what?
There was one fan out there who said, hey, just because you picked these stats, maybe he's not as bad as you think. I'm paraphrasing, but I found the one Baker Mayfield truther that still exists in this world.
Wow.
And he's trying to defend him.
Hats off to that person. Yes. I held
on.
It was a time. I gripped that hand like in cliffhanger, just holding on hope that Baker Mayfield is good, but eventually still don't let go of me.
All right, let's put this to the test. Would you rather have Mike Evans?
Oh, no, hold on. Before we get into the names here,
okay.
Here's what I'll throw to you, Bet. So, Evans in contract year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that doesn't hold up as well for my argument because I was going to say, well, what do you think about Mike Evans catching passes from Caleb Williams? Because the Buccaneers are going to be trusting the process this year, and I think their odds were. They were like the number 3 pick. They have to somehow out tank the Arizona Cardinals and the Houston Texans, of which the Cardinals have both picks. They absolutely could do it. So Mike Evans it's difficult, one, because of the contract situation. You don't know where he's going to be. I think he still has a couple more years of okay production, not elite production, but I think that he still has dynasty value. And he's one of those players that things could turn around rapidly. Like he could go full AJ Green. Like leaves his original team where you're like he goes to a location where it looks like, hey, this is pretty exciting because there's a decent quarterback, there's some target share for him, but he's actually toast. But his situation also could improve by next offseason, May. We could be like, Mike Evans, I don't know, man. He just signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know. This could be another big year for him. But, okay, go ahead and give me some names, Kyle.
Mike Evans or Broncos rookie Marvin Mims?
So team dependent, right? Because if you're a contender, you just hope that you're good this year and you hope you're good again next year and you ride it out with Evans. That's what I would do. Marvin Mims, 2nd-round pick. It's a lot of projection there.
Yeah, it's close for me.
I like Marvin Mims.
Would you rather have Mike Evans, so let's say you get low-end wide receiver 2 season, or Samaje Perine for a team?
Evans.
It's kind of team dependent probably on that one.
Perine. Yeah, team dependent.
All right, last one. Would you rather have Mike Evans or an early 2nd-round pick in a Superflex league?
This year or next year?
For next year, for 2024.
I'll take the pick.
I would say rookie pick.
I think teams are deciding right now
I don't like this.
What they need to do, or hoping that Mike Evans is somewhat competent and they're able to trade him before the deadline to somebody else. But it's tough. Like, he's a player that it wouldn't shock me. Mike Evans had 8 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns this year, even with the bad quarterback play. Like, he's that dude. And so I think you can still get low in wide receiver 2 weeks this year.
And I think it is worth pointing out as well that, like, Brady was just Tom Brady was not Tom Brady last year. I know that he was
bad.
Like, they had some offensive line problems. So, like, part of the Mike Evans decline, I think he had, kind of the corpse of Tom Brady also dragging him down. Like, so it's just, that could be a factor of, like, maybe Mike Evans is actually still okay, but Tom Brady could not hit him on those deep targets with the regularity that we were used to for the last couple years. So, like, I'm gonna leave some margin there for Mike Evans that I think he still is a good player.
Except for that 1 week against Carolina where they did the same thing over and over and over. Like, stop the deep ball. Stop it. You just KO'd my team. It was bad. All right, a couple mailbag questions.
Mailbag.
Our Dynasty channels are hopping right now in the Discord. If you want to get those answered best, you can do that. This one's from Burrito Bill on Discord.
Ooh.
What's the most draft capital you would spend for Treylon Burks? How do you value him? Is he a contending piece or a building block? Which is interesting because I think you could go either way.
I say Kyle thinks he's both.
I think that he's a really good building block that you can get cheaper than what he is being valued as. Like, I think that Treylon Burks can be a top 24 receiver this year.
Now, you do realize by going in on Okonkwo and Burks, you have...
Well, Chig was free.
But hold on. You have changed yourself to Bananarama. Like, that is your future, is Will Levis.
That's the headline here.
Will Levis will be the one supporting your 2 pass catchers.
That is one way to definitely look at it. I've blocked out him existing. But Chig was free, and he's going to be great.
Sure.
And then Treylon, I think Treylon is not being thought of among that group of first-round wide receivers anymore. Like, he's just kind of passed off as like, oh, well, he airballed his first year. His targets per out run numbers were totally fine.
Yes. He is not – I mean, his biggest problem, honestly, is Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, that they came out –
right.
Like, they look like they're going to be elite immediately. And Burks didn't look like that. Meanwhile, he had opportunity. I know he kept getting hurt and some off the field stuff. I'm not out by any means on Treylon Burks. A draft capital. The question is, like, if we're talking about right now, like, would you rather have Jordan Addison or Treylon Burks? I lean Addison.
I think I lean that too.
So that pushes it to like the 106, 107. And now you're talking, do you want Zay Flowers? Do you want Quentin Johnston or Treylon Burks? And I think I go Burks there.
Betz, would you rather have Treylon Burks or where a lot of people are taking Dalton Kincaid, like, 108, 109?
Yeah, I think I'd take Burks. I mean, you bet on draft capital and you bet on the underlying metrics that say he's good. But the thing about him coming out, remember, was he was kind of a manufactured touch kind of guy at Arkansas. He might need some time to develop in the NFL. People are so quick to just ignore that stuff and just focus so much on what happened. He showed enough of growth to me as a player last year that like I'm willing to accept, yes, the Tennessee Titans situation is not ideal, but he showed enough. He's first-round wide receiver. They are counting on him 100% to be the dude, so I would certainly take him in that scenario.
Yeah, Jason a couple weeks ago said like, hey, this is, you can get maybe 120 targets this year, which is pretty awesome to be able to find. Next question here is from on our website from Living the Dream. What's up, ballers? I'm drafting in a startup Dynasty Superflex. Would you rather draft at the 406 Drake London or Kyle Pitts if you hate yourself? I think the answer is Drake London for me.
Oh,
yes.
Man.
For me, it is.
They're close in our rankings.
Yeah.
If you get those in the Dynasty Pass, but I think Drake London is so young, and so is Kyle Pitts, but so young to be able to get a 29% target share as a rookie. I think we're going to see a second-year bump.
I mean, essentially every argument you make for Drake London, you can make the near identical
exact same.
I have more pain on the Pitts side, though.
And I understand that. I've had very little Kyle Pitts exposure personally, so I can like objectively look.
You got to mask up.
Yeah. Yes. What was the stat, Kyle, of the Mariota passes?
So he had 14. Kyle Pitts had 14 attempts that were over 20 yards. He only caught one of them. 19 of 15-plus yards, only caught 3 of them. And Mariota was just bootied.
I couldn't remember. Someone had tweeted out the actual percent of uncatchable passes that Mariota thrown, and it was
looking at the film
outrageous.
On those deep ones, looking at the film, maybe 3 or 4 of them were catchable.
And the point being, that's not Kyle Pitts' fault. Kyle Pitts is running free on those, and just the positional scarcity. I think both of these guys they still have time to become what we think they can be, and if it works out for both of them, you would much rather have Kyle Pitts.
Next one from Discord from Jason's black polo shirt. How long should a rebuild reasonably take? I see people that seem to be in the Browns rebuild mode, and then a follow up of I'm hopefully in the final year of a rebuild. How should you approach the running back position? I will say for being in a rebuild, it's really hard to kind of binary say like switch on and off, like now I'm in, now I'm out, now I'm in. You might be closer than you think. And it kind of goes back to that question people are asking, like, does Burks fit a contending team or a building block team? It's like, it could be either. Like, it could be both. Like, you can really do. So I just want to say that first, like, don't just say, like, this is where I'm at. We're kind of do that for our own team. But I think a rebuild should take at least 3 years.
3 was the number. It was between 2 and 3. And we've mentioned this. I think Jason might have said it in Dynasty Week. When you are rebuilding, yes, you want to have, like, you got to have, your blue chip guys. But at the same time, you have to be willing to just tear everything down to the very nubs, to the bottom, just load up on so many draft picks, ensure that those draft picks are going to be the 101, the 102. You can't accidentally win games, and you don't want people accusing you of tanking. You can't be accused of tanking if you are trading everything away and fully rebuilding. Like, you're not sandbagging, playing the wrong guys. You're doing what is right for your team. So 2 to 3 years is what you should expect before you're back in the competition, back in the playoff talk, and maybe you get lucky and you get the 101 in a Bijan year or a Saquon Barkley year.
Betz?
Yeah, those are the exact years that kind of came to my mind, too, is 2 to 3. The first year, you should be absolutely horrible. You should be terrible. And the second year, you'll know, if you're in the right trajectory, if you hit on a few of those guys. And then by year 3, we tend to see first, second, and third year players develop in the NFL and become fantasy stalwarts for your roster. And if you're starting to get a few of those, you're on the horizon of breaking out into being one of the top teams in your league. But that said, you got to hit on your rookie pick. So it's hard to say it's definitely going to take 2 years or it's definitely going to take 3.
Right.
If you went in on the Laquan Treadwell years, it's probably taking 4. It might take 5, So it really is year dependent, and that's tough because it can be a very, I think, wide range depending on how it goes.
What a year. Was it? That was Treadwell, Coleman, Doxson, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't have the Zeke 101 pick there, you got hosed unless you got Michael Thomas.
Treadwell shows up in a lot of my rookie spreadsheets, and he like breaks a lot of the formatting because he was so bad. So like when you like use him in the data set compared to like, the Garrett Wilsons, everybody else, he does it. Last question here. This one's from Sebastian in Germany.
Bonjour.
Sebastian has a pretty intense trade in Dynasty. Justin Jefferson or a 2024 first-round pick, Cooper Kupp, and Treylon Burks.
Oh my gosh.
I'll say this.
That's a big boy trade.
If you're going to get Justin Jefferson, I appreciate you ponying up and saying, I'm going to overwhelm somebody. So what do you guys say?
I would take Justin Jefferson in this scenario because the 2021 sounds great, and it will gain value between now and next year, but it could be Laquan Treadwell, right? That's a complete question mark. Cooper Kupp, we love for this year, but the age is a slight concern. Matthew Stafford's overall health long-term is a concern. And I like Treylon Burks. We talked a lot about him on the show for some reason. But
I wonder who put this together.
Yeah, Kyle. Next week featuring Chigakonkwo. I'm not sure.
Next week is, guys, I made a big trade. I traded away Treylon Burks.
I'm not sure that Treylon has the ceiling that we want. He's going to be a fine, I think, wide receiver too, but I think you're putting too many, 80 cents on the dollar here to get a player that's the 1.01 in a startup for a reason.
Give me Jefferson.
Yeah, I'll take Jefferson. And I like what you did there, Betz. So many times people don't put names with picks. They just think, oh, it's a first round pick. Well, there's a big difference between, are you getting, Bijan and Gibbs, or is it the end of the first round? So make sure you add that in there and just kind of say, hey, for my team, what would I need? Add that in. But I lean Justin Jefferson. Also, it's pretty cool when you have the 1-on-1 on your team and you just get to ride for a while. That's going to do it on this episode. Next week, we're talking Superflex rankings. Get everything in the Ultimate Draft Kit, ultimatedraftkit.com. See ya.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.